Yeah, enough of that. Okay. Hello, Henning Pauli here, and you are you in front of YouTube. That's why it's called YouTube, because... Okay. Those of you who know me personally will ask, what the flying Facola is he doing with a Marshall? Because doesn't he always say Marshall is crap? Well, I do. I really don't think that the big company that is Marshall nowadays is able to reproduce what they did, and they're kind of resting on their fame and not really doing what they used to do. And I'm pretty sure there's great Marshalls out there, otherwise they wouldn't have made the history that they made, but I don't think they're doing that anymore. And anyway, I think there's other companies that can get you that British Marshall sound better than they can. However, there is something to be said for the JCM800. And this is Patrick Schneider's, friend of mine. He was nice enough to loan that to me, so I can show it to you. And you know that amp. I mean, come on. This has made history. I mean, from Zakk Wylde, Slash. Did Slash play JCM? I mean, a billion people played this amp and made it what it is. It was always not my cup of tea. I thought for the British sound, there's other things to do. Other amps there. So the thing is, I was asked by a company, what would you do if you were to improve or modernize the JCM800? If you wanted the JCM800 sound, but what new features would you put in there? Well, in order to do that, I really have to understand what this thing does well, right? Which... every time I heard it, it was like, meh, not my cup of tea. I played with it for about an hour, and I'm really liking it. It might be the speaker. It might always be that I heard it through cheap speakers, that I heard it at gigs where I was mixing with, bad miking situations. Maybe guitar players that, didn't cut it. Maybe crappy guitars. Who knows? But it's definitely not a bad amp. I mean, it can't be. Otherwise, how would it have achieved its level of fame? It's a one-channel amp, 100 watts. Well, here's one of the problems right away. A lot of power that is very hard to control. It has a master volume. It's not like a Plexi that you have to crank up. What I want to do is explore the sounds of this thing a little bit, and then talk about what a modern amp could be like, and get your take on it. I want you to comment. Don't watch this and go like, hey, this is nice, Marshall. No, I want you to tell me what you think. Because that way, I can, tell the company that asked me, hey, this is kind of what the guitar player community thinks, and this is a JCM type sound that they would buy. As for, do we need another JCM type amp? Or really, how many amps are there? There's the Marshall British kind of sound, okay? There's the Fender Tweed kind of thing, Bassman, that kind of thing, Fat Fender sound, and there's the Blackface. Okay, so we're at 3. There's the Vox sound. There's, let's call it the California sound. Boogie, Soldano, round, fat, warm. I'm missing something. Oh, Dumble, of course. Okay, but everything is a clone or modification of those basic settings. So how can we modify the JCM800? Traditionally, it doesn't have a lot of gain. What you've just heard in the intro was all that it has. And people boost it with something subtle, like a tube screamer, which we have, kind of. Zakk Wylde is famed for using a Boss SD1, very inexpensive pedal, or some other type of boost. So let's go into the setup. Boink! Okay, the setup, pretty quick and simple. We've got a PRS SE245, straightforward Les Paul type guitar, which is probably the best body for the JCM800. And to boost it a little bit on the floor, we got the Pro Power from Carl Martin, powering a Tube Screamer type pedal from China, from Joyo, or this case Harley Benton is rebranded. The Vintage Overdrive. We got the Roll Boost, straightforward boost, and the good old
SD1 from Boss, which many people use to boost this amp. So those are the ones we're boosting it with. We're going 8 ohm into the Shure Badger cab, which is powered with a Veteran warehouse speaker Veteran 30. 8 ohm, I said, mic with an SM57 halfway between the middle and the edge. Pretty straightforward. And that is the setup. Back to you.
There you go. This is what we're using to check this out. And first, very quickly, we're going to go through some sounds and then think about and ask you questions. What do you think this would be? What do you think this? Would you like this on a JCM800? Is that bullshit? As for what else is out there, I'm sorry. Fryette, of course, makes a great JCM type amp with some modernized features called the Deliverance. A friend of mine has it. Great amp, but also very limited in functionality. It's bare bones, you know, no loop, no nothing. It's one channel, bam, in the head. Question is that necessary? Can it only have one channel and sound like this? Would a second option for a channel actually kill the sound? I don't know. I'm not a tech guy. I just play these things. So let's look at the clean. Well, the clean for me not happening. It's not Fender, and everyone knows that. Very few people probably play a Marshall clean. Please correct me if I'm wrong about this. If the Les Paul type guitar already gets that much high end out of it, I don't really want to play that with a Strat because it will probably eat my face. You see that piercing? That's what I don't like about this. But that's not what this is great at. So we're gonna crank it up immediately. Go to half. Where are we? Oh. So. See that? It's very piercing. And it's hard to play for me. It's not very responsive. But of course, you crank this puppy up and you got the rock sound. Very, very fat, very bottomy, which is why people like it. But the gain is missing. So we're gonna step on the traditional solution that most people use, which is the Tube Screamer, or in this case the Joyo Vintage Overdrive. It retains its precision because the Tube Screamer kind of lets some of the clean sound through, so it's not muddy at all. It's still right there, but with more gain. So we're gonna go to a boost, the Joyo Roll Boost. It just pushes. Okay, there's the robust and the good old SD1, which should technically do the same thing, similar to what the Tube Screamer is doing. I'm switching. Not much difference there. Of course, something that a lot of people use the JCM or JCM type amps for is drop tuning, so we're gonna go to drop D. Because in the low end range it is still very responsive and has this thick fat chunk. Other amps have that too, but it obviously does that well. But it is limited in its options because of its one channel and, you know, no frills. Enough of that. Okay, well, for lead sound it can scream. Personally, I'm thinking the creaminess is missing. Of course, that's why you buy a different amp. But maybe we could get this with the option of adding the creaminess. So let's think about a couple of ideas that I already wrote down. And please add whatever you can think of. I mean, if you think about, if you want this with Hello Kitty on it, and we get, you know, 500 responses with, we want Hello Kitty on it. It's probably not something that's gonna happen, but hey, who knows? So I was thinking, this has an FX loop, but when Patrick bought it, it was removed. So it is as bare bones as it gets. The FX loop is traditionally serial. Is it necessary that the JCM800 has a parallel effects loop? For example, the Deliverance has none from Fryette. So if you want to use a delay, which I think is absolutely essential for any type of lead work to make your sound float and connect the notes and make it, you know, floaty, it's very hard to put it in front of an amp that has gain. And this already has so much gain that the delay probably won't be able to handle it. So with a serial loop, it's possible, of course, but with a parallel loop, you would be able to retain the original sound and just add in the delay. So do we need a serial and parallel loop? Do we need both? Do we need it switchable? What would you see on your new, brand new modernized JCM800 type amp? Now, do we need the possibility of switching between two different sounds? Like a clean channel and a lead channel. If you ask me if the clean channel sounds like this, I don't need it. I'm sorry, but this is not the clean channel that I'm looking for. Of course, you could use the clean channel as a clean channel to put a pedal in front of it, and then you have, you know, the clean with the pedal and the amps channel. Talking about this, what about adding a boost so we can actually have more gain? Would it make sense? Looking at how good it sounds with the SD1 or the Tube Screamer type pedal, would it make sense instead of something that we call a boost to just put that pedal in there? So when you switch the boost on, you have a built-in Tube Screamer and pretty much a knob that adds the gain. So, you know, built-in Tube Screamer into a JCM800, kind of combine the two things that everyone combines anyway. Would that make sense? And if you don't want it, of course, you know, hey, click it out and use whatever you want in front of your amp. Now this has of course, AX7s, and it's 100 watts, so it's got 4 EL34. That is how these are, tubed. I think the Deliverance has something else, KT88. Is that a tube? I think it is. Now here's something that I think would be good. A slightly differently voiced clean channel, so you can actually use it for really clean, almost Fendery type sounds. Ooh, different power amp. Nah. 606s and then switching. That's 2 amps in one. We don't need that. So what I want is a flexible EQ section. Now there's one amp on the market that does that. And that's the Engel Steve Moore's Signature, which has actually 2 mid controls. I don't understand why not more amp manufacturers do that. Is it a technical issue? And if it is, please tell me, because I don't know about these things. Or is it a guitarists are too dumb to understand EQ issue? Because bass players on their basses get 3-band EQ. We don't get that. We get a, high-end roll-off tone. On their amps, they get sweepable mid frequencies, 2 to 3 mid bands. They get all that for the bass. Where are we? Guitar sound is all in the mids. Low end, very low end, anything under maybe 100 hertz, totally pointless. In the very high end, a 12-inch speaker can't even produce that. So where is our great EQ section? So I took the liberty to design one and show it to you. And then I will actually show you what that does. But I'm going to have to check on my iPad to see the illustration, which will pop up on the screen right there. So here's my EQ section, professionally designed. And we're going to have bass, mid, and treble. And presence. I think presence, as far as I understand, has something to do with the high end in the power amp section, but maybe not. So we're going to call presence also high end. Bass, you see, I see it from the point of view of a mix engineer, because in mixing we have a lot more options and we use them. So why not have them available on the amp so that I can actually sculpt my guitar signal clearer already before it goes into the microphone. So the low mid, I would put that, for me, bass, if you're gonna see in the demo soon, is somewhere around 150 on the Mark EQ that we're gonna use. It is the green knob at 160, and that is the bass that you want, the nice chunky guitar bass. It's not the bass, or even the bass drum bass. So the low mids for me, let's call it 400 to 500. So let's say 450. It would be nice to boost those if you want a more nasal, low nasal sound. But that is the area that you can see on the Cambridge, the graphic EQ in a minute, where you take out with a very narrow Q, so a very narrow band, which is called a notch filter, kind of notchy. So you take out a narrow band, and then you have the modern rock and metal sound. Okay, so you don't have that boxy low mid sound. So what I would suggest is we put a notch switch on the low mid. So if you wanted to take them down, put that in, and then the band gets narrower. Now, the mid-mids, or as we call them high mids here, I call them mid-mids. That is where all your nice creamy roundness appears. Your vintagey tone is all midsy-mids. We're talking between 600 and maybe 1K, 600 hertz to 1000 hertz. And depending on what you want, that is where you want to boost to make a really beautiful lead sound. And in a minute, you're going to see when I go to the lead tone, which is done with the Vintage Overdrive, boosting the JCM800, that I'm actually switching to the Neve EQ and I'm boosting there, and all of a sudden it gets very nice and rich and singing and creamy. So this is what I would want this for, to be able to sculpt those areas around 600 to 1000. And then on the treble, either have it really trebly, kind of what Chris Lord Alge does. His guitars have a lot of treble from 5K on to infinity. So he uses a high shelf and he boosts a lot there to make them, kick like they do. So I would want something that is either a band at 2.5K or 2K. As you can see with the mark, that's the orange one. When you bring that in, you get real bite, which with this amp not really necessary, but you can get that. Or the treble will be switchable to a shelf at 5K. So this is the EQ section that I would imagine on an amp, because those are the frequencies that I want to sculpt when I'm sitting there as a mix engineer. I don't understand why we guitar players don't get the luxury of having control over our mids the way that the bass players do and the way that any mix engineer does. You know, can we not be trusted with that many knobs? Are we too dumb? I say no, we're not. Hey, all you need is a good demo of the thing showing what you can do. All you need is a good manual showing you basic settings and what they do, and you're good. So I'm going to show you what you can do with those particular frequencies right now. Hey, that's a lot more than this can do by itself, isn't it? Okay, so why don't we get this? I'm proposing an amp that has that EQ section, but the sound of the JCM800. Maybe with a boost similar to a Tube Screamer built in. Now, Mesa Boogie has an amp called the Rectifier. And a lot of you think, well, that's, you know, the Rectifier. Hey, it's called the Rectifier. It is called the Rectifier because in the power amp, it has rectifier tubes. Now, what they rectify, I have no freaking clue, and really, frankly, I couldn't care less because I'm not an amp guy. I'm not a technician. I don't know about this stuff. They're rectifier tubes, and Boogie went and made them, you know, made the rectifier stage to be. Apparently, this rectifier is solid state. Now, what if we had both? What if that was switchable and your rectifier stage of the amp could either be tube, like Boogie does, or solid state? Would that be something you'd be interested in? I think it would be interesting to see, you know, what the difference is and have the option. Let's talk about tubes. Biasing. I mean, practicalities. You know, an amp needs to be serviced. There's different approaches. I know that Engel has a specific way of doing their tube thing. Or was it Hughes and Kettner? One of them has like little lights on the back that show you which tube goes down, and if one goes down, you can still go in 50 watt or something like that. I think these things are very nice. It always bugs me when I have to change tubes because I have to go to a technician that knows what he's doing. Serviceability would be nice, because I would probably change the tubes a lot more often if I didn't have to go through this hassle. So being able to get to all the bias points in the back would be nice. Of course, Boogie has tubes that you buy from them in particular colors that you put in that are pre-biased for you or something like that, or pre-matched. That would be nice as well. But what do you think about biasing points available from the back so that you can do it yourself with a good instruction on how to do it? So all you have to do is buy your EL34s, put them in, do it yourself. Something that I really, really want in a 100 watt amp is a power soak. Now, I didn't even crank this up. This develops its amazing sound at the point where it gets freakishly loud so that it's unusable in most club situations, definitely not at home. This was already way too loud for home. So I'm proposing a JCM800 with built-in power soak. There are companies who show you how to do that. Engel has power soaks in all the 20 watt amps, which is very nice. A lot of amps now are switchable, 100 watt, 50 watt, even 50 watt is still too much. I would like to be able to take this down in as much as is possible with the technology that is available. Another friend of mine, Jan, he's got this too. He bought a THD power soak for like $400 or $500, and all that it does is it's between the amp and the speaker, and it burns the electricity, and it burns the power in heat, and then it goes to the speaker. So what I propose is I want to be able to take it down to 5 watt. Maybe, give me a button, 100, 50, 25, 12.5, and whatever half of that is, 7.25, something like that. That's totally wrong. It's 6.25. You know what I mean. Whatever is humanly possible, I want to be able to scale this down so I can get the power amp saturation. And hey, give me a piece in the back that gets really, really, really hot, but warn me about it. Say, hey, this is where we're burning the heat. Okay? That's where we're burning the watts. Whatever. So that's something I can imagine in this amp. What else? Does it need a built-in reverb? Don't really think so. But let me know your thoughts on this very, very classic, very famous amp. And, do you want rectifier switching? Tubes solid state? Do you want 2 channels? Do you want a built-in boost? Do you want a power soak? Do you want parallel and or serial effects loop? And most certainly, what do you think about the idea of finally having a better EQ section for us guitar players? So let me know your thoughts, and comment below. JCM800 Modernized. You can be part of it.